Guys, let's talk about that Severance finale of Season 2. A lot took place. As always, spoiler warning, so if you've not seen the show, do not move forward. This is your official spoiler warning. So, I like Season 2. I thought it was a good season. I didn't like it as much as Season 1, though. And, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, and I definitely don't formulate my opinion based on what other people say, but I wanted to see if maybe some other people were, I don't want to say struggling, but maybe trying to piece it together. And it does seem to be the consensus. Now, I think this is a great season of TV. I really, really like it. It's a great mystery box show. I guess starting at a high level, and I always talk about this when talking about the show, is my favorite part of the show for me is the take on corporate America. Not just shitting on corporate America, but, what the average person goes through when they go into specifically an office. And really, the show is a metaphor for when people go into the office and they walk through those doors. Maybe some people have a totally different personality. Maybe some people have a slightly different personality. But you definitely have a different personality at work. You definitely hide things. You definitely probably don't talk about certain things you did on the weekend. And yeah, so I think the part of the show for me that's great is that. And exploring that idea of when you go home, you don't remember anything from the office, and when you go into the office, you don't remember anything from home, and these two separate lives, and exploring that. Lumen being kind of like maybe an analogy or metaphor to Scientology, or maybe they're like a big corporation like Apple, which is ironic because the show is on Apple, or maybe it's some sort of weird thing. That is a path that the show can take, and you could show like what is Lumen up to, all that. It's an evil corporation, but then I think you're kind of going into the 99%. And what I mean by that is this show was in the 1%. It was very unique to me in that it really explored themes and topics that you normally didn't see. And it was very smart. It felt like you were watching a very smart show. And the scene I always talk about is when they have those scenes that are supposed to be funny and awkward, like, oh, we're having a party in the break room. But it's almost passive-aggressive, like they have to go to the break room, and it's very awkward and passive-aggressive. Those are the best things for me because those things happen in a real office, right? So as this season takes place, and I'll get into spoilers now, I'm kind of wondering if I really honestly care about the Gemma stuff. I know that sounds crazy, but I just don't. This really was a Gemma season, and I was thinking, the first season, I thought the first season was focused mainly on the people, right? It wasn't so focused on Lumen. It was these people going in and out every day and who they are and what they struggle with and their identity. And this season seems to be more about Lumen and their plans. And like I said, it's still a good show, but that's not the interesting part of the show for me. I don't want the show to get too big. I don't care about Lumen or their shareholders or anything like that. And so as we get into the finale, I think the opening of the finale is probably my favorite part of the whole season, is when Mark, and this is what I'm talking about as my favorite part, is, holding up the video camera and talking to himself. And Innie Mark and Outie Mark, Mark Scout and Mark S, are talking to each other and having a conversation with each other. And I think that's the interesting part of the show. And then the show, like I said, gets into stuff I don't like in the middle of the episode, like the marching band stuff, which I have other questions about, like, were they severed? I think they were severed, which opens up more questions, because then you're like, who are these people? Like, what is severance? How much is it known about? Is it known in society? Like, what? And again, I honestly don't even care about that stuff. I want it to stay focused on the building and what's going on inside. And so, I really didn't like, the scene that I hated the most was when they killed, I forgot his name, but the big dude, and he fights with the goats. And Brienne of Tarth, the actress who plays Brienne of Tarth in Game of Thrones, eventually kills him. I thought that really crossed a line. I don't think there should be blood in the show. I don't think there should be gore in the show. I don't think there should even be fighting in the show, because none of that takes place in corporate America. Everything in corporate America, in a company like this, is very passive-aggressive. And all of, like, the quote-unquote pain that could be inflicted is about either being fired or reprimanded. So I just didn't like that at all. I thought that was just not in tune with the show. However, I do like, as they're kind of passing through doors at the end, we get the real Gemma and Mark, and then we get the real Mark and the fake Gemma, and it kind of like goes in and out, and then she eventually leaves the building, so she goes back into being herself, but then Mark is still the Innie version of himself because he's in the building, and he's kind of faced with this choice of staying in there with Helly or leaving with Gemma, and it seems like he appears to stay. So it was a good ending, but the show is just tough because, not even that I want to know where the show is headed, but it doesn't really seem like maybe the show progressed a little bit too fast because it's not trying to be too slow of a show, but it's the problem with the show is it's almost trying to exist like in this time period and not move forward, but as a show it has to move forward, right? We have this really, really good dynamic that's really interesting in season 1, and I kind of just wanted to hang out there, but it seems like the show is progressing and progressing and progressing, and it reminds me of Lost, right? Lost was super interested in season 1 and season 2, but it seems like the more and more you found out about the island, the less and less mystery box show it became, and it just kind of became like this this show that was good, but just kind of not as interesting. I remember when I was watching Lost, and spoiler warning if you haven't seen Lost, the peak of the maybe one of the peaks of the show was in season 1 when they see the polar bear, and you're like, that's just the peak because you were asking so many questions like what's going on, like that's the best, the peak of it. And in this show, it seems like because we've gotten some answers, it becomes less and less interesting. Cold Harbor, we finally know, is basically the removal of all of her, they call it tempers, or I guess emotions, of Gemma, so pretty much anger, and they're pretty just trying to reprogram her so that she doesn't have any connections to her past life. Another part of the show, which I think is interesting, is kind of how people, even after they're severed, do the same thing. So Helly, likes Mark on the inside and on the outside, and how people have similar, Dylan, even though he's struggling on the outside, he's still smart on the outside and on the inside. And I think it's just interesting. It's almost like a take on, no matter how many times you play out your life, you're going to be leaning towards the same thing, because even if you have a different personality, you still have kind of the same, inhibitions. So yeah, I'm going to do more of a deeper breakdown with a friend. I really want to go deeper into this show and talk about it. It's the type of show that I don't really like talking about myself. It's not as interesting. But, I really like this season of TV. Season 1 for me is like the peak. Season 1 for me is 10 out of 10. And I was hoping this season, something I thought about was, coming from COVID, where, I was thinking like maybe a work from home thing would be different. Maybe they'd let the employees work from home and be severed from home, which would be a good take on it. But they went in the opposite direction. And, all of like the episode with Cobell, I hate episodes like that. I hate when episodes do like a separate side plot and then you come back to the main plot. Shades of Stranger Things when they had that terrible episode with those kids. But yeah, still a good episode of TV nonetheless. I still think they hit on some pretty cool themes, but I just think, as good as this season is, it almost seems like season 1 could just be like its own thing. Like, even though it ends on a cliffhanger, it just, to me, them coming to grips with the different personalities is what's interesting. Talking about other characters on the show, I think, Helly, I think the characters going to war with each other on the inside and outside is also probably the best part of the show. So Helly, who probably clearly really wants to be married, realizes that her innie likes Mark, and so that kind of draws her interest into, like, who is this person? I thought the Dylan stuff was pretty interesting, how the innie version of himself is kind of like the same version as him, just like without all the baggage. He's just like a lot nicer and not as condescending. And I thought they should have leaned more into that. I don't think they're leveraging Dylan enough. I think Dylan should be one of the stars of the show. He is one of the main characters, but it seems like a lot of times it's either him just, using his body or, like holding a switch or something. And I'd like to see him do a little bit more than that. Or him just kind of having this dumb look on his face. Like, he just has this look on his face that he always does. So that's my review of season 2. Again, it's kind of hard to talk about on my own as opposed to other shows. And I'm still honestly trying to piece it together. But I thought the finale was definitely one of the better episodes of the season. So I think it definitely improved it for me. I was a little bit struggling towards the middle, trying to keep momentum. I think this episode and the episode where they go camping, those are like the 2 climaxes. I don't really love the marching band. But yeah, we'll see. I still, I kind of just missed season 1 when, like, we didn't know as much and they're doing the numbers and we're just still trying to speculate what they're doing. And now that we know what they're doing, I just don't think it's as interesting, but I'm still excited for season 3. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you on the next one.